You've seen the photograph. A person standing in front of a curtain holding a novelty check the size of a door, smiling with their whole face while a state official in a suit shakes their hand. It's such a familiar image that nobody ever asks the obvious question about it. Why does that photograph exist at all? Nobody photographs you signing a mortgage. Nobody makes you hold a giant piece of cardboard when you get a raise. Hold on to that because the answer is at the top of this ladder, and it explains the entire machine underneath it. We're going to climb every level of winning, from $2 to $1 billion, and at each rung the money will do something different to your life. Then at the very top we'll find the one participant who wins at every single level, every single week, and never has to hold up a check at all. Level 1 is the small win, and its job is not to make you money, it's to keep you playing. $5 on a scratch-off, $20 on a quick pick, and the reason it feels like a win rather than a partial refund is that your brain files the ticket price and the payout in separate accounts. Lottery tickets in the United States generate on the order of $100 billion in sales a year, and that volume is built almost entirely out of Level 1. Small prizes, paid often, engineered to land just frequently enough that the machine never feels rigged. What's actually happening is a slow transfer, and it isn't evenly spread. Study after study has found that lottery spending consumes a far larger share of income in low-income households than in high-income ones, which makes it, in economic terms, a tax that people volunteer for and that the state markets to them on a billboard. Level 2 is the four-figure win, $10,000. This is the amount that arrives with no plan attached, and it's the first rung where the government appears. Once a prize crosses $5,000, federal withholding kicks in at 24% right off the top, and you get a tax form for the rest, because gambling winnings are ordinary income. So the $10,000 is 7.6, and then something predictable happens to that 7.6. It evaporates in about 6 weeks, not on anything stupid, but on a series of completely reasonable purchases that each felt like an exception. This is the level that teaches the lesson the whole ladder is built on. Money that arrives outside your normal income doesn't get spent by your normal rules. It goes in a different mental drawer, and that drawer has no budget in it. Level 3 is $100,000, and this is the first genuinely useful amount. It's enough to change exactly one thing. You can kill every consumer debt you have. You can put a down payment on a house. You can pay for a degree. What you cannot do is change your life, and the gap between those two sentences is where most of the disappointment at this level lives. There's also a tax surprise waiting in April. The 24% withheld at the counter is not your tax bill. A six-figure prize stacked on top of a normal salary can push you into a higher bracket, and plenty of winners at Level 3 discover in the spring that they owe several $1,000s more on money they've already spent. Level 4 is $1 million, and we need to be careful here, because this is the number the entire fantasy is built around, and it does not do what people think. $1 million prize, after federal withholding and top bracket tax and state income tax where it applies, lands somewhere around $600,000 in a high-tax state and more like $700,000 where there's no state income tax. Now invest that sensibly. At a conservative withdrawal rate of around 4% a year, $600,000 produces roughly $24,000 annually. That is not a life. That is a part-time job's income, forever, with no raises. $1 million does not mean you never work again. It means your housing is solved, or your retirement is solved, and you go to work on Monday. Every person who has ever fantasized about this number has fantasized about a number roughly 10 times too small for what they were picturing. Level 5 is $10 million, and this is where the arithmetic finally crosses the line into freedom. And here's where you learn how the advertised jackpot actually works, because it's the single most misunderstood thing about the lottery. When a sign says 10 million, that is the annuity value, the total of 30 graduated payments made over 29 years. The cash option, which is what almost everybody takes, is roughly half of it. So 10 million advertised is about 5 million in cash. And after tax you're somewhere near $3 million invested throws off something like $120,000 a year without touching the principal, and that is genuine, permanent, structural freedom. The paycheck is now optional. It's also notably a fraction of what the billboard said. The number on the billboard was chosen by a marketing department that understood people respond to the biggest number that can be legally printed. Level 6 is $100 million, and at this level the money stops being the problem and the people become the problem. You have more than you can spend on yourself, and the difficulty is now entirely social. Because in most states, you cannot win quietly. Public records laws in the majority of states require the winner's name and city to be released, and that requirement is not an accident of bureaucracy. The state needs winners to be visible, because visible winners are the advertisement. That's what the novelty check photograph is. It is not a celebration. It is an ad campaign, and you are the model, unpaid in perpetuity. A handful of states allow anonymity outright, and several more permit claiming through a trust or a limited liability company so that the entity's name appears in the press release instead of yours. Winners who plan for a week before claiming, assembling a lawyer, a tax accountant, and a fiduciary advisor first, then claiming through a structure, have a completely different experience from winners who drive to the lottery office the next morning holding the ticket in a sandwich bag. Same prize, one of them keeps their phone number. And the social problem at level 6 is far more specific than people expect. It isn't strangers mostly. Strangers write letters that go in a drawer. It's the people who have a legitimate claim on your attention. The brother-in-law with a business plan, the cousin whose surgery isn't covered, the friend from high school who never asked you for anything before. Every one of those requests is individually reasonable and the total is infinite. And you now have to decide, one human being at a time, what you owe people, which is a question almost nobody has thought about before the money arrives. Winners describe this as the actual difficulty of the prize, and it shows up within days. Which is why the first real decision at this rung is an investment. It's the policy. Winners who survive level 6 socially tend to do the same thing. Pick a number, give it away deliberately and early. A fixed amount to each sibling, a fixed amount to each parent, done, announced, finished, and then have a single sentence for everyone else. The policy does the refusing so you don't have to keep doing it personally. Without one, you spend the rest of your life adjudicating requests, and every no you issue costs a relationship you didn't want to spend. Level 7 is the billion-dollar jackpot, and this rung is worth understanding as a piece of engineering rather than a prize. The odds of winning the Powerball jackpot are about 1 in 292 million. Mega Millions runs around 1 in 300 million. Those numbers are not accidents either. The games were deliberately restructured to make jackpots harder to win, because a jackpot that isn't won rolls over, and a rolling jackpot grows, and a growing jackpot is the only thing that pulls in people who don't normally play. The billion-dollar headline is a product manufactured out of everyone's failure to win. Every ticket sold during a rollover is funding the spectacle that sells the next round of tickets. And now the honest part, because there's a statistic that gets repeated in every video about this subject, and it deserves better handling than it usually gets. You've heard that roughly 70% of lottery winners go broke. It's cited constantly, usually credited to a financial education nonprofit, which has publicly said it cannot find the source and does not stand behind it. The number appears to be folklore that acquired a citation, so the responsible version is, we don't know that, and anyone telling you that figure with confidence is repeating something they didn't check. What the actual research shows is more interesting and less satisfying. One well-known study of Florida winners found that people who won large prizes were more likely to file for bankruptcy several years later than people who won small ones. The money postponed the crisis rather than solving it because the underlying financial behavior never changed. Meanwhile, long-run studies of Swedish lottery winners found sustained improvements in life satisfaction and financial well-being years afterward, with no evidence of mass ruin. Both things are true, and together they say something specific. The money doesn't fix you and it doesn't destroy you. It amplifies whatever system you already had. A person with no system gets a bigger version of no system. Which brings us to level 8, the only participant that wins every time. American lotteries pull in roughly $100 billion a year in sales, and after prizes and retailer commissions and operating costs, something on the order of 30% flows to state governments. That's tens of billions of dollars annually. And in most states, it's earmarked for education, which is the sentence that makes the whole thing feel civic instead of extractive. Except money is fungible, and that's the trick sitting underneath the earmark. When lottery revenue arrives designated for schools, legislatures have repeatedly responded by reducing the general fund money that was previously going to schools and spending it elsewhere. The lottery money goes in, the old money comes out, and the schools end up roughly where they started while the state has acquired a large new revenue stream. It's been documented in state after state. The earmark isn't a lie exactly. The dollars really do go to education. It's just that nobody promised the total would go up. There's one more decision that sits across levels 5 through 7, and it's the one winners get wrong most often. Lump sum or annuity. Almost everyone takes the lump sum, and the standard argument for it is sound. Money invested today beats money paid out over 29 years, and you control it rather than the state. But that argument quietly assumes you will invest it, which assumes a person who has never managed a large sum will behave like someone who has. The annuity is the only financial product in existence that protects a winner from themselves, arriving every year whether or not the previous year was a disaster, immune to a bad business idea, a bad marriage, or a persuasive friend. So the correct answer isn't the one that maximizes the spreadsheet. It's the one that matches the person. A disciplined winner with an advisor should take the cash. A winner who knows, honestly, that a large number in an account would not survive contact with their own impulses is better served by 30 guaranteed payments. And the ones who say that out loud about themselves are rare and almost always end up fine. Choosing the annuity is not the financially optimal move. It is frequently the correct one, and those are different things that most advice refuses to separate. So look at the full structure now. A state runs a game with odds it designed, advertises it with a number that is roughly double the cash anyone will actually receive, withholds tax before the winner leaves the building, publishes the winner's name so the next round sells, and books the difference as revenue that substitutes for taxes it would otherwise have to ask voters for directly. Every rung of the ladder we just climbed is a customer experience inside that system. And that's the answer to the photograph. The giant check exists because you are the commercial. The state isn't celebrating your luck. It's demonstrating that luck is available, using a real person as proof, in front of a curtain, on the local news, for free. The smile is genuine. The transaction is not what it appears to be. Which is why the only rational move at any level of this ladder is the boring one. Decide what a windfall would do before you have one, because the drawer that money goes into gets chosen in the first 48 hours and almost never gets changed afterward. And if you ever do find yourself holding the ticket, the most valuable thing you can do is nothing at all for a week. Sign the back, tell no one, and go get a lawyer before you go get the check. The people who stay rich are just the ones who were boring for 7 days. If this changed how you think about money, hit like and subscribe for more.